The laughter of her former friends refused to leave Adaora's mind. Days had passed since she walked out of that restaurant, but every cruel word still echoed her heart. We never loved Adaora. We loved what she could do for us. She buried herself in work, hoping endless meetings and business deals would numb her pain. It didn't. Her mansion felt emptier than ever. The luxurious cars in her garage no longer excited her. The awards displayed in her office suddenly seemed meaningless. For the first time in years, Adaora questioned whether all her success had cost her something far more valuable: peace. One evening, her personal assistant Ngozi knocked gently on her office door. "Ma, are you all right?" Adaora smiled. "I'm fine." Ngozi smiled politely. "You've said those words every day this week." Adaora sighed. "I thought money made life easier." Ngozi had her head. "It solves many problems, but it also creates new ones." Adaora looked out the window. "I don't know who truly loves me anymore." Before Ngozi could reply, Adaora's phone rang. It was an invitation to the annual Hope for Tomorrow charity gala, an event attended by some of Nigeria's most influential business leaders. "I don't think I'm in the mood," Adaora muttered. Ngozi smiled. "Go." Adaora looked at her. "Why?" "Because hiding from the world won't heal your heart." After a long silence, Adaora nodded. "You're right." 2 nights later, she arrived at the grand ballroom wearing an elegant emerald green gown that turned heads the moment she stepped inside. Cameras flashed. Journalists rushed towards her. "Miss Adaora, one picture please." She smiled politely before making her way inside. The room was filled with politicians, diplomats, captains of industry, and philanthropists. Everyone wanted a few minutes with Nigeria's most admired businesswoman. But Adaora wasn't interested in conversations. She simply wanted the evening to end. As she walked towards the refreshment table, a waiter accidentally bumped into another guest. Several documents slipped from Adaora's leather folder and scattered across the polished marble floor. People looked. No one moved. Then, from across the room, a man in a navy blue suit calmly walked over. Without hesitation, he knelt down and gathered every document. He carefully arranged them before handing them back to Adaora with a warm smile. "I believe these are yours?" Adaora smiled. "Thank you." As she reached for the folder, he noticed the documents were architectural plans for a vocational training center. Instead of complimenting her appearance, he asked, "You're building another skills academy?" Adaora looked at him surprised. "You know about the project?" "I read about it. The country needs more people creating opportunities instead of waiting for them." Adaora smiled genuinely for the first time that evening. "That's exactly why I'm building it." The man extended his hand. "My name is Alexander Adeyemi. I'm Adaora." He laughed softly. "I know." Adaora laughed too. I suppose that wasn't a necessary introduction. For the next 20 minutes, they talked. Not about luxury, not about money, not about influence. They talked about education, youth empowerment, Nigeria, family, purpose. Before leaving, Alexander smiled. "It was a pleasure meeting you." The pleasure was mine. Then he simply walked away. Adaora watched him disappear into the crowd. She frowned slightly. He didn't ask for my number. That had never happened before. Every wealthy man she met always found a reason to stay connected. Alexander didn't. For some strange reason, she wished he had. If you're enjoying this story so far, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every week, we bring you dramatic African folktales filled with powerful life lessons. Now, let's see what happened the next time fates brought Adaora and Alexander together. 3 weeks passed.
Adaora thought she would never see Alexander again. Then fate intervened. She attended the commissioning of a newly built secondary school outside Abeokuta. Her foundation had donated the library. Another company had constructed the classrooms. As she toured the school, she noticed a familiar face wearing a reflective safety vest. Alexander. He wasn't standing under a canopy giving orders. He was inspecting the classrooms himself. He suddenly stopped beside one of the doors. "This tile isn't level," he said to the engineer. The engineer looked confused. "Sir, hardly anyone will notice." Alexander smiled calmly. "The children who study here deserve our best. We'll replace it." The engineer hesitated. "But today's commissioning," Alexander interrupted. "We'll delay it. I'd rather disappoint people today than endanger children tomorrow." Adaora had been listening from a distance. She couldn't help smiling. Most wealthy men she knew chased applause. Alexander chased excellence. When he finally noticed her, he smiled. "Mrs. Ezeani, I didn't know your company built this school. And I didn't know your foundation donated the library." They laughed. The rest of the afternoon, they toured the school together. Adaora watched him greet every laborer respectfully. He knew many of them by name. He thanked the cleaners,
Shook hands with the security guards. Even the elderly gatekeeper smiled when Alexander greeted him warmly. On their way out, Adaora finally asked, "Why do you know everyone's name?" Alexander smiled. "My father taught me something." "What was that?" "If you only respect important people, then you don't truly respect people." Those words stayed with Adaora long after she returned home. A few days later, her phone rang. "Hello? Good evening. It was Alexander. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all. I was wondering." He paused briefly. "Would you have dinner with me on Friday?" Adaora smiled without realizing it. "I'd love to." Their first date wasn't at the most expensive restaurant in Lagos. Instead, Alexander chose a quiet waterfront restaurant overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. There were no cameras, no celebrities, no unnecessary attention. Just two people talking for hours. They laughed over childhood stories, discussed books, shared dreams. At one point, Alexander asked, "So, what's your guilty pleasure?" Adaora laughed. "You'll never believe me." "Try me." "I secretly love buying roasted corn from roadside sellers." Alexander burst into laughter. "The Billionaire?" She laughed too. "Don't judge me. I wear sunglasses so nobody recognizes me." By the end of the evening, neither of them wanted to leave. For the first time since the betrayal, Adaora felt her heart beginning to heal. Over the following months, their relationship blossomed naturally. Alexander never asked for business favors, never requested introductions, never hinted about investments. Instead, he showed up. When Adaora worked late, he brought her dinner. When she traveled, he called simply to ask if she had eaten. When she looked exhausted, he reminded her to rest. One evening, after she finished speaking at a youth entrepreneurship conference, Alexander was waiting outside with a small bouquet of white lilies. She smiled. "You remembered. They're your favorite." She looked at him surprised. "I only mentioned that once." Alexander shrugged. "The important things are worth remembering." Adaora's heart melted. Weeks later, as they watched the sunset from the balcony of her mansion, Alexander quietly took her hand. "I've met many successful people." Adaora smiled. "And?" He looked into her eyes. "They spend their lives building businesses. You have spent yours building people." No one had ever described her that way. She looked away smiling shyly. For the first time in years, she believed she had finally met a man who saw her heart before he saw her wealth. But as she lay in bed that night, the voices from the restaurant returned. "We never loved Adaora. We loved what she could do for us." She sat upright. Could Alexander truly be different? Or was he simply more patient than the others? The question haunted her for days. Finally, she called the one man who had handled every legal matter for her family for over 20 years, Chief Ume. When he arrived at her office, he smiled warmly. "You sounded serious on the phone." Adaora took a deep breath. "I need your help." "What kind of help?" She looked him straight in the eyes. "I want the whole country to believe I've lost everything." Chief Ume stared at her in disbelief. "What?" "My businesses, my fortune, my mansion, everything. I want everyone to believe it's gone." The elderly lawyer slowly removed his glasses. "Adaora, why would you do something like that?" She lowered her eyes. "Because if fake friends could pretend to love me for years, I need to know whether the man I love truly loves me." Chief Ume remained silent. He knew no argument would change her mind. He sighed deeply. "I hope you are prepared for what this test may reveal." Adaora nodded. "So do I." She had no idea that the decision she was about to make would change both their lives forever. Do you think Adaora is making the right decision, or is she risking the best relationship she's ever had? If you were in Alexander's position, would you stay with someone who had lost everything? Tell us in the comments. And don't miss episode 3, because Adaora's shocking announcement sends the entire country into disbelief.